You're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast and the Season 3, Episode 6. This is your host, Cindy Lin. Hey guys, welcome back to the Home Staging Show podcast where we talk about all things real estate, home staging, and styling your home to live or to sell. Since we just celebrated a Lunar New Year, I want to wish everyone a prosperous and playful year of the monkey. Our theme this month is all about Project Home, where we show some love and go through 21 easy projects to refresh and renew your home to either enjoy or getting ready to go on the market in March. So today is the second episode on Project Home. If you haven't joined us for the project, you can join us anytime on the blog. There's a new project blog post published every weekday this month on the blog, and I'll link that to the show notes as well. And if you want the worksheets or the email course format, there will be a sign-up link available for you as well. Our show is brought to you by our in-house product, EcoJo, the eco-friendly St. Joseph statue home styling kit. In real estate, there's a tradition to bury St. Joseph statues for good luck, but because the existing products on the market were made with plastic, we made an eco-friendly version named EcoJo. He's all natural, won't harm the earth. For more information, visit www.ecojokits.com. Now on to today's show. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode, and Happy New Year to those of you who celebrate Lunar New Year. I'm actually recording this episode on New Year's Eve, which is about Sunday night, midnight California time, about 4 o'clock here in the afternoon here in Taiwan. On the show today, we're really going to talk about decluttering and clearing your home. So this was something that we just went through on Project Home for week 1. And if you did the weekend project on refreshing your living room, I definitely want to see some pictures. So feel free to share your photos on our Facebook group or send them to me, and I would love to see your progress. One of the most important New Year traditions here is to clean your house inside and out, and there are actually literally traditions where people use brooms and sweep all the dust out of the doorway and then out of their house. This is to symbolize that we're expelling all the negative energies and bad luck out of our home. So declutter, as you know, is something I haven't really talked about on the show or on the blog, except for last month's episode with Laura Gaskell. So declutter is a huge topic, I think, in the world of home staging. And to be totally honest, I actually don't like to talk about it. Especially I feel like every time you look at blogs or articles about staging, people always say all you need to do is decluttering. But as you know, or as you know, I've talked about over and over again, like home staging is so much more than just decluttering. So I think I sometimes overcompensate by not discussing decluttering on purpose. And also decluttering has a pretty negative connotation, especially every time I mention it with clients, especially the ones that may have a lot of stuff in their home because they're kids or whatnot. They usually give me this face. So I don't really put a strong emphasis on decluttering when I'm discussing project with the clients. But I do say that for staging, pack up things that you don't need for the next 3 months. So a lot of times when people say the 80-20 rule, like for example, there's an 80-20 rule in real estate, like 80% of agents does, I'm sorry, 80, like 20, sorry, like 80% of agent does 20% of business. And vice versa, like 20% of agent does 80% of business. I feel like the 80-20 rule applies that here too. So we really only use about 20% of our stuff all the time. And this is the same idea with capsule wardrobe, and that is based on as well. And that I'm going to discuss in next week's episode about clearing your closets and capsule wardrobe. So I was really inspired by the podcast interview with Laura Gaskell. Having that conversation with her, it really lit up a light bulb in my head. And as you know from that interview, Laura had experienced this in selling her own home as well. And she shared her process of clutter clearing and how she went through the home selling process. Because she's basically, she did all the work to like did minor repairs and declutter and really just like reorganize and then styled her own home for staging and for sale. And so from that conversation, I realized that this is something that we should really talk about and we really have to discuss if homeowners living in their home while selling and they want to realistically sell their home for the most return investment possible. There's a saying in real estate that if you can't see it, you can't sell it. And so that's very applicable when it comes to space. When you have stuff everywhere in your home, all people are going to see is your stuff. They're not going to be able to see the floor plan. They're not going to be able to see the beautiful details you may have in your home. They're going to be looking at your personal stuff. Unfortunately, that's just how most people's brains work. There's really no way around it. You never know how smart or how unimaginative the buyers may be when they come through the home. They may be tired also. They might have just seen 4 homes in a row. So you just really want to be able to stand out from their mind. That's why it's really important to have a well presented home when you put your home on the market. So pretty much every time, almost every time when I mention decluttering to my clients, every time I say that word decluttering, I can pretty much see panic or annoyance flash across their faces. And I know it does sound stressful, and same thing with cleaning as well. Um, but it's something that you just have to do it. Truth be told, as modern human beings living in today's world, it is very easy to accumulate stuff. But these stuff eventually become unused because we're focusing on the new stuff as they keep coming in and we're not retiring out the old stuff. So then the old stuff collects dust and becomes clutter. And clearing clutter doesn't sound very sexy either. And I know it doesn't sound very fun either, but it is actually very beneficial for both of your mental and physical health. And if you're selling your home, it's also beneficial for your financial health. And here are several reasons why clutter clearing is so important in your life. The first one is when you're removing clutter, you reclaim more space. You get more real estate back in your home. This is such a duh topic, right? I mean, people were like, "Ugh, of course I know this." But plenty of people live in rooms with stuff that are older than Justin Bieber. So we don't really have infinite space in our homes, unfortunately. So if something new comes in, ideally something old leaves so you will have enough room to live comfortably. That's just pretty much the law of physics, right? Second of all, it becomes really hard to remove clutter when you attach emotions to them. This I totally understand. It's very hard. I am a clutter bug as well. I do own a lot of stuff on top of all the props I've been collecting over the years. But one of the things I didn't talk about was a lot of things that spark about having this big trip this year for me was that I experienced multiple deaths in a very short period of time in my family last year. And grief is a very intense process, especially when you go through 3 people passing in your family in a very short period of time. So, the worst part about dealing with grief, in my personal experience, is probably dealing with the stuff um, that the past have left behind. In addition, to obviously going through all the funeral and all the arrangements and stuff. But yeah, when you're clearing their stuff, every object will remind you of something. Even if it's a good memory, it might become a bittersweet moment because that particular thing reminds you of someone that you have passed. So it's definitely a process. But through that process of removing things from your home and from your life that you no longer need, you also heal emotionally by getting rid of the items that are bringing you down or no longer serve you. And that's why it's really important to go through this process because it also helps you emotionally. The other main reason why people keep things for emotional reason is because of fear. Either fear of scarcity, fear of not having enough, or just fear like, what if I need to use this down the line and I don't have it? But usually when that happens is actually very rare, right? As we all know. So I personally have been going through a lot of this fear in the past couple weeks with my grandmother and a little bit about actually closet clearing, which I'm going to talk about next week with capsule wardrobe. But anyway, so my grandmother is 91. She's turning 92 this year, and she lives in an apartment here in Taipei. So apartment living in Asia is usually very cramped by Western standards. People are basically living on top of each other, and your neighbors are incredibly really close to you. I mean, we can pretty much hear if like the neighbors are like scolding their kids and stuff like that or having fights. I mean, like literally, like distance between you and your neighbor are very small. So it's not like super crazy like what Hong Kong looks like in that movie Contagion. But it certainly is smaller by Western standards. I think live in Taipei. My grandmother had lived through a lot in her lifetime. In I mean, 92 years. Imagine that. Taiwan was colonized by Japan from 1895 through 1945. My grandmother was born 7 years after World War One ended. And having lived through World War II and the White Terror period, which was this period of extreme civil unrest in the history of Taiwan, at one point there were also extreme depression of the economy as well. So right now, if you go to a bank, you want to exchange your US dollar for Taiwanese money, it's called the new Taiwan dollar. When the old Taiwan dollar converted to the new Taiwan dollar in the 40s, I believe, it was $40,000 to exchange for one new Taiwan dollar. So as you know, it was a very, very, as you can imagine, it was like a very, very rough time. So it is very understandable she would want to keep everything. But it's become detrimental to her health because she will literally keep everything. Like things are broken, but she feels like she can still fix and use down the line, which is really unrealistic. But she's kept broken things for years, right? Also, she's also currently 92, so the likelihood of she actually fixes things is very, very, very slim. Or my grandmother keeps these plastic packaging, thinking that she can reuse them for something. Um, like plastic trays or, like old, like when we have um like cookie jars, for example, or like, plastic containers, she keeps stuff like that, or water bottles. And so there's stuff everywhere on the floor, in bags or boxes or in bins. And when my aunt passed away 12 years ago, my grandmother took in most of everything my aunt had. My aunt was divorced at a time, so she didn't have a husband. So my grandmother took in a lot of stuff my aunt had, including a lot of furniture, which was a lot. I mean, basically she was trying to fit another full apartment worth of stuff into her own apartment. And my grandmother gets really upset when we clear the boxes. We'll break things down into stuff that are getting recycled or stuff that can't be salvaged and have to be thrown away. And my grandmother would basically fight you for it or just bring the trash back into the house after we left. And my grandma is a bit like a magician, I think, because every time we clear up the room, when we come back the next day for lunch, there are more stuff laid out on the floor. So it's been basically an uphill battle. It's been a really difficult process and it has caused a lot of friction between my mother and her. But this is something that we have to do for her because otherwise she will have nowhere else to walk in her own apartment. As I said, she's turning 92 this year, and last year she had a minor stroke. So it's really, really important for her physical health that her apartment is easy to walk around in, and also she's not at risk of tripping over anything. Also, the weather in Taiwan is very humid, especially during warmer times, like in the late spring, summer, and stuff like that. It gets, to be 70s, 80s here So things get moldy very easily. For example, there are a lot of critters that like warm, humid weather, like cockroaches, unfortunately. Um, so having clutter is also not good for that because when you have clutter, there's no air circulation. It's easy to grow mold or have these little critters that come in and make a habitat out of it. So in general, it is really important to clear all the stuff that you're not using from your home if they're starting to create a problem. So number three, it's good mojo. So as you know, I grew up the concept of feng shui, and we talk about this on the show as well in season two. Um, and it's something that was kind of ingrained pretty much all my life. If you watch the real estate shows here in Taiwan, actually, they actually have a feng shui component, and they discuss how it affects pricing in real estate as well. And so it's kind of our inherent belief that we believe home has energies, and your home's energy can become good when you fix it, or it can become bad or stagnant when you ignore it. So it just really largely depends on how you live in your home, for example, how you arrange your furnishing and how you live in your space. So when you have a very cluttered home, the energy gets stuck. It has nowhere to travel to. So it becomes very stagnant. And eventually the energy could die and it's bad. We don't want that, right? We don't want to live in a dead energy space. People want to live in a home that is well lit and is well ventilated, for lack of a better word. The concept of feng shui, feng means wind, and then shui means water. So that's the thing with energy. That's why there's water features in front of homes, or actually especially in front of businesses, to help to circulate those kind of energy. Because one of the things we always want is to make a lot of money, right? So you need all that energy to keep circulating, like money keeps circulating. So, for example, we're doing a ritual for our ancestors today to celebrate the new year, and then also ask for their how do you say it? Kind of ask for their care in a way, like you pray to um like you go to the church to pray to God and to ask for their blessing. Right, that's the word I'm looking for. So you're basically asking for their blessing. And then at the end, we burn paper money, um, kind of for basically it's for the dead and for the gods as part of our offering. And then at the end of it, we do this ritual where we pour water on it and then we say, make money like flowing water, meaning that we want to make money very easily, like water kind of flows out from a water faucet kind of thing. So anyway, so that's why it's really good mojo when you clear clutter and stuff that you don't use from your home, because as you know, things we don't use become stagnant, becomes dead, and it collects dust. So it's not really good for your health either. For example, scientifically explaining, if you have asthma, you don't want to be living with a lot of dust, right? So it's that same concept. So as I've mentioned on the show before, um, I don't know if you guys heard that episode of the special episode of Halloween that I did, and when I interviewed my friend Diana, and my friend Diana asked me if I have felt energy when I go visit homes, because as stagers or anyone who work in real estate, we visit a lot of homes, and I said, yeah, actually, I have. I can always usually feel like when somebody just pass away from the home, for example, because you can really feel like when I walk in, I feel like I can't breathe. Like there's a lot of dead energy or like that musty smell. It's usually because things haven't been moved for a long time, right? When someone is about to pass away, they usually are not very active. So the energy of the home becomes very stagnant. And that's why it's really important for you to start clearing all these things that you no longer use from your home to create really good feng shui and really good mojo for your living space. Number 4, clearing clutter actually help you save time. So how many times have you tear up your house apart and look for just like that one little thing? For example, keys. I think keys is probably one of the most things that people are always looking for. And that's why it's really important to have a designated area for specific items like your keys or purses, or just get into the habit of getting ready for the morning the night before. And this is why it's a much more productive habit because it saves you time. If every object in your home has a place that it lives at regularly, you will be able to get things very quickly and very easily. And this applies to selling your house as well, especially if you're living in your home while you're selling. You may get a call from the agent saying that the potential buyer is coming in half an hour and you only have half an hour to put the house back together. So you will have to be able to do that very quickly. And one of the things to do is also to get in habit of having these tools that help you, whether it's like a bin or baskets or trays. And as you know, these are like my favorite things in the world. I love baskets and trays because they can really help you to just like get organized very, very quickly. And also serves as a catch-all. So like if you have to put things away very quickly in a pinch, you can always shove everything in a bin. And then now you know that everything you need to look for is in that bin. It becomes much easier to break things down. So in our studio, I also organize our prop this way. I have all our kitchen canisters on one shelf, for example, all the wine glasses on one, etc., etc. And this way, when I'm looking for a specific prop, I can immediately go there and visually to see if it's out or if it's in, or if other choices I have to prep for the upcoming projects are there that I can shop for, or coordinate colors, etc. Number 5, you have more control. So having an organized home or space to work in means you have more control over your life. So as I've mentioned before as well, is that usually how your mental state or the state of your life is, it usually is reflected in your home. And this is something that we do kind of unconsciously, because if you are in a very chaotic living environment, generally your life is pretty chaotic because A, it's hard for you to find things. B is that you probably feel a little bit, psychologically speaking, you probably feel a little bit frantic just because you don't feel very organized. At least that's how I feel when I feel like my life is spinning out of control. I tend to clean or start organizing things to help me to feel like I have more control over things. Or I write things out. I recently started journaling, which has really helped to deal with a lot of changes in my life as well. And I know a lot of you who are going through selling your home, maybe it's not for a very happy circumstance. I find that journaling can be a very useful tool for dealing with that kind of stress. So I recently started reading a few books by Marie Kondo. You may know her from her most famous one that was translated in English, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. She also wrote this book called Spark Joy, which is an illustrated guide for anyone who wants a home and a life that sparks joy, which is something I really, really want for you guys as well. If you are not familiar with Marie Kondo, she is very well known. She's from Japan originally, and she works with clients all the time to help them get organized. But then she felt a little bit guilty and also stressed, I think, when she felt like she couldn't service as many people as possible. And a lot of her clients come back to her and say, like, you should really write a book. So she wrote this book and it became a huge hit in Japan and consequently became like an international bestseller. And so she now has this new book called Spark Joy. And I really love this idea of it. Each aspect and object in your home or in your life actually should really serve a purpose and an objective, and more importantly, makes you happy. I recently come across this quote from Sori Yanagi, who was a Japanese product designer. He played a role in Japanese modern design developed after, I'm sorry. He played a major role in Japanese modern design, and it developed after World War II to the high growth period in the Japanese economy. He's both a representative of the whole Japanese modern design movement and also a full-blown modernist who merged simplicity and practicality with elements of traditional Japanese craft. Lately, I've been spending a lot of time in Taiwan, as you know, and because we have that colonization background with Japan, there are a lot of influences of Japanese culture, I think, in the way I grew up as well. So I really admire that idea of celebrating that everyday object. I think that is really, really important because um I think we are always looking for something super exciting, right? Like super amazing, like going to Olympics, for example, or going to like the Super Bowl, for example, that's happening right now. Um, but the thing is, like, it's also very joyful to live a very peaceful life. And it's also very like joyful to celebrate kind of little win and little victory along the way. And I especially feel that way because I have my business for 10 years. And I think in the beginning of my career, I really, really was like very ambitious. I want to do all these big things. I have all these big dreams. And I get really flustered because I couldn't achieve them. But it was also my fault because I wasn't ready for these things. My own skills was not ready for my own ambition. So I became very depressed. But it wasn't until I realized what success what how I should define success instead of how my parents or how the society should define success or how people around me should define success is something that I need to define for myself. And everything shifted for me, like having that clarity and having be able to celebrate gratitude in my life, and then also just little moments in my life really has changed the way I think about a lot of different things. um and I came across Sori Yanagi's quote, and this particular quote really struck a chord with me. And he said that things that are easy to use survive, regardless of what is fashionable. And people want to use them forever. But if things are created merely for a passing vogue and not for a purpose, people soon get bored with them and throw them away. The fundamental problem is that many products are created to be sold, not used. That is very powerful to me. And it reminded me when I was doing research about doing Eco-Joe, for example. I was reading, I think it was Chris Anderson's book, and he talked about, especially now today too, like, with the fast fashion. But it really developed in the 60s and the 70s where we learned to have this disposable culture in America. And just to, instead of having things that are durable, we invented things that are easy and convenient, but we can very easily, quickly to throw away. For example, water bottles, right? Non-reusable water bottles. And as you know, at this point, it's become a detriment to the health of our ocean because they're finding all this trash being thrown away, and you know they got into the ocean. For example, like a plastic bag can be flown away very quickly and easily, and a lot of them end up in the ocean. And fish eats them. They eat the degrading parts of the plastic. It's not good for our food chain. It's not good for us humans either because we are on top of the food chain. So in general, this whole idea of object produces beauty only through usage is a very important idea. It's also a very eco-friendly and green idea. Because if this is something that you believe and practice all the time, you'll cut down useless consumptions and waste and clutter in general. So in her book, Marie Kondo goes over how to edit and organize your home so you can live happily ever after. And here are my takeaways from her book. So first of all, is mindset. If you haven't checked out our 3-part mindset podcast series, definitely check it out. I'll link it to the show notes. So I spent most of January talking about mindset on the Home Staging show because I think mindset is so important to finally set that intention for yourself and to live a better life and to visualize your ideal life and to manifest it. I am really a believer of it just because I have gone through it over and over again. And I've seen my friends who have done it for themselves, for their businesses as well. Obviously, people like Marie Forleo or Danielle Laporte, they're very influential. Yeah, so it's the same thing. I mean, a lot of life coaches there used to be like this big thing in life coaching. It's like visualize your success. And a lot of way that is true. I mean, we laugh about it, but it is true. Like, you have to be able to see it to achieve it. I am a Sagittarius, I'm a like, so the sign is basically a half human and half horse. And the sign is an archer. And it's the same thing with archery. You have to be able to see your target to be able to hit it. So that's why I put a very strong emphasis on mindset, because when it comes to selling real estate, it's a mental game on both sides. It's buyer psychology and seller psychology. So as a seller, obviously you have to play into buyer psychology. But as a real estate professional, I have to be concerned with the seller's psychology as well. I know there are certain things I need to talk to my sellers about to make sure that they achieve them, but it's very, very important that they don't like hit the wall, so to speak, and just completely give up. Because I have seen that happen several times. And it's very easy to just give up and say, oh, you know what? It's fine if my house is messy. Actually, it's not. It's not fine if you leave like dirty dishes in the sink while like we're doing an open house. It just is not. People are gonna judge the way you live in your home, and they're gonna judge how they're gonna think that that's how you're gonna take care of your house. So that's why it's such a mental game on the both side, and that's why I put a very big emphasis on mindset. It's definitely not just being woo woo. I think it's actually there's practical reasoning behind it. So the second thing I took away from her book is that you need to edit furiously. So I've said this over and over again. A major part of what stylists do is learning how to edit and tell a cohesive story. So it's the same thing when you present your home on the market. What kind of story are you telling? Are you Is your house a home that is just for single people who maybe have a high-tech life? It's very technology friendly. For example, you can tell that story by having plugs that have USB charger built in, right? Or maybe your home is a family home, right? So you paint that story by staging the house to be very kids friendly, very family friendly, etc., etc., etc. So this is the same with your organization effort. Is this object still serving me? There's really no reason for me to keep my Sailor Moon style uniform from middle school other than sentimental reasons. Take a pictures, keep it, and move on, right? So for sentimental reasons, I've kept them for a couple decades, and they're just taking up space in my closet, doing nothing. So it's important to kind of look at each object. Do I really need this? If not, maybe this object can serve purpose somewhere else, right? Or if we really can't salvage it, maybe we can recycle it or upcycle it, or just have to throw away into the landfill. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. 3, let it go. So you can insert your best Ella or Channing Tatum style let it go here. Most clutter bugs, yours truly included, have a difficult time to let things go. It is definitely a learning process. The more you do it, it's a practice. The more you do it, the better you are at it. So once you have edited down your essentials, you will have to start letting the rest of the stuff go. So for example, like my big trip, I took one suitcase and one computer bag for 11 months of traveling. I simply don't have enough luggage space. So my original plan was to take 2 carry-ons, but because I was also bringing supplies for art school, I had to switch to one suitcase. So like I said before, there's no infinite space, unfortunately. It's not like a magic backpack where I can like put in infinite amount of clothing. So it's the same with your home. We don't have infinite space. The only thing we can do is A, minimize the stuff that are taking up the space, or B, creating more space by either adding more storage space in your home or leveraging your existing space better. For example, you can install hooks on the wall to hang your bikes on instead of just putting your bikes in like a hallway, for example, which can be like a trip and hazard or just taking up room. So there are different ways you can leverage space, but those usually are the 2 main things. Either you trim the fat or you create more space. So my point is you don't have infinite space. So you really have to pick and choose the best pieces that will truly make you happy and make your life easier. Number 4, don't organize based on your space, but based on the type of objects. This seems like total common sense to me when I read it, but it wasn't really until like I learned it. Because when I first read it, I was like, I cannot believe I had not thought of this. Um, it just seems so simple. So the way Marie Kondo says that this is one of the most common mistakes when people are organizing based on their space. For example, people organize their closets, but they don't take full inventory on all the shirts, scarves, pants, etc. into the account. So they may unknowingly own 200 scarves, but they have no clue on how many items they actually own and need because they're only clearing one part of the overall stuff. So I also love this idea because, for example, if you're organizing your clothes, it wasn't until you see everything piled in together in like this giant pile, then you will realize how much stuff you actually own. So once you can visually see everything, then you can kind of start calmly assess and determine what should go and what should stay. And this is kind of the same way we organize warehouse as well. So we would usually group things in like in objects in categories. So like all the vases will come together. So over time I can kind of start seeing what are the things we don't use all the time, and what are the things that should just be let go, either sold or donate, or just we have to throw them away because they're broken and can't be fixed. So that's a really good process when you kind of just lay everything out by the type of the objects. So number 5, having a workflow and follow it. So I love this idea as well. As you know, I love checklists. I'm one of those people Kondo mentioned where I see everything in the middle of organizing. I kind of like hop down that memory lane and then totally lose focus on what I was doing. I definitely also have that shiny object syndrome. So by having a workflow and order of things that being organized, it really forces me to stay on task and push that shiny object syndrome to that shiny object, for example, to its appropriate order. Number 6, you want to ask yourself, do you love this? Do I love this? I love this idea. As I'm taking on my big trip and working through various stages of griefs and emotions, personally, I've wanted to shed more and more stuff. I don't know why, I just want to. Like, at one point when I was packing, I was just like, oh, F it. I don't even want to bring anything at this point because I feel like I want to bring everything. I mean, even after I pack, I still feel like I brought everything and then nothing. I mean, 40 pieces of clothing sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot for an entire year. And I'm packing basically for 10 months of weather and different like geographic areas. So it was very tricky. But again, it's like kind of that fear setting in, like the fear of not having enough stuff. So it was definitely kind of like a crazy thing. I think kind of messed with my head a little bit. But it's true, like you were born without all these material possessions and you literally can't bring anything with you. So let's just focus on living with the things that truly inspire and make you happy. Okay? Number 7, you want to attract the best and your ideal self. So I think this is really interesting because Kondo believes that the current home may bring you your future home. So by intentionally organizing your home, you will attract your future home. And I think this is fully in tune with the concept of feng shui and the law of attraction. By removing things that give you the negative energies and that block you from create a home you love, it will help you to attract a better home that's more ideal for you. Number 8, gratitude. I think gratitude is a very important foundation for building a happier life because if you have appreciation for what you already have, you will want less material possessions. I also love how respectful Kondo is about her possessions. She always says thanks to the items that are no longer serving her. She would say, thank you for helping me. Or like if it's like a blouse, she will be like, thank you for being so colorful and helping me look beautiful. And then she would respectfully give those items that no longer serve her to someone else who's in need, donate them, give them away, or just discard them if she can't do that. And I really love that idea. So number 9, you want to carve out time. So I've been working on clearing a lot of clutter um, in January when I was working through preparing for the trip. And the easiest way for me was to schedule 30 minutes a day. And most of the time, I get really into the cleaning mode. I think the first 10 minutes are usually the hardest. I remember when I was training for a half and a full marathon, a lot of runners says that the first 3 minutes are the worst when you start running. And the worst part actually was to have the motivation to put on your running clothes and shoes to go out and train. And I am in full agreement with that. But once you start running, you get into that mode and you're sliding into it and you're hitting your zone. And then you really just keep going. And so a lot of times I have a very little tolerance, I think, in terms of cleaning. And so I schedule 30 minutes. Like when I first started, it was 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes turned into 30, and then 10 minutes turned into 45, and stuff like that. So now I just schedule 30 minutes a day. And I find that once I get into the mode, I usually even go more than 30 minutes a day. Kondo suggests to carve out a big chunk of time, like 6 hours, or make a day of it with your family. But for me, I only have that much tolerance a day. So, um, you got to do what works for you. So just, you have to find your rhythm for that. And number 10, have an outbox. So I love Laura's idea of having a bag where you can chuck things that you're donating or getting rid of. And Kondo's method of having an outbox where there's things that need your attention but still need to be completed, it's a great idea as well. And I actually put this in the project home too, to establish, like, maybe have a bin or a box or whatnot. In a way, it's a catch all. So, and also it's really great if, for example, you maybe there's like this vase you kind of love but you're not sure. What if you put it in the outbox for a week? If you didn't think about it, you didn't care, then you know it's time to go. But if you thought about it throughout the week, then you know it's something that might still serve you, then you can bring it out of the outbox. So this whole idea of asking an object or asking yourself, like, do I love this? Do I need this? It's actually a very helpful way. It helps me a lot with shopping as well. Because I found that to, well, obviously, if you want to live a minimalistic life, you need to have less stuff, right? Or just have the essential stuff that really serve you and that you are in love with. And so now, like, I'm really into, so I recently got this planner and I got into this whole planner world where, like, you decorate your planner with stamps and washi tapes and stuff like that. It helps me because it helps me get into the habit of journaling and then writing down my feelings and what I'm working through, my like planning out my projects, as well as just kind of documenting my days. Especially this year, I have so much travel planned. So it's just kind of a nice way for me to document and then also reflect. And but the thing is, like, it can get out of hand very easily, especially when you're collecting something. I mean, like, a roll of tape is not huge, but it still costs money. And washi tape are not exactly the cheapest thing, even though there are many great knockoffs nowadays. It's also very on trend right now. It's at least in Taiwan, as far as I can see. But I think in general, we're kind of stationary file here anyway. So, but anyway, my point is that collecting things can get out of hand really easily. So every time I'm shopping now, it's like I ask myself those questions, like, do I really need this? If I buy it, how would I use it? And do I really, really love it? And if I don't know, I'm on the fence about, I put the stuff back. But if I can't stop thinking about it, then I'll go back and buy it, right? That's a good test to see if you really want it because it makes you happy or because you really need it or stuff like that. So those are kind of the good tests for you to do. So those are my 10 takeaway. Going back to talking about decluttering in general has a negative connotation, like, debug or something like that. I mean, anything with a DE beginning, usually it's not a very good positive correlation. It just doesn't sound very pleasant either. The process and the result of clutter clearing is so powerful. It really should have a better word to describe it. If you have a better word, please let me know. I would love to use it. In staging, I talk about buyer psychology a lot. I mean, I definitely put a lot of emphasis on buyer psychology because it's such a mental game. But like I said earlier, there's also seller psychology as well. Coming back to the point where I don't like the word declutter. I really love the idea mindful clutter clearing. When Laura Gaskell told me about it, that was the name of her clutter clearing course. My first thought was, oh my God, that's so brilliant. I totally love that. And the other way to think about clutter clearing is that you're investing in your future. If I can frame clutter clearing in that positive way, then the homeowner will be much more receptive to that idea. So, in my opinion, the word decluttering immediately puts a roadblock or speed bump or put people on the defensive mode, especially in seller's mind. They might think, "Oh my God, are you saying I have a lot of stuff?" Or like, even before they start a wholesaling process. So I want to make sure that I'm playing into the seller psychology as well. I want to make sure that this is something that the sellers can really see the benefits for. And it's very true. I mean, clutter clearing is one of the most effective way to get your return on investment when it comes to selling your home. The main reason that is because buyers can really clearly to see how your home can be set up and how they can move into your home mentally. And most of the time, clutter have personal elements in it. That's why it's also a really good process to help sellers to start disassociating themselves from their home because they are so emotionally invested in the home that it becomes harder for them to negotiate price. And that's why it's such a big thing to invest into your future when you start clearing the clutter mindfully, especially when you're selling your home. So, like I said, clutter clearing and organizing are crucial in refreshing your home, whether if you're selling or living in your home for the long term. And here are my 4 additional top tips for organizing and clearing in your home. Number 1, so group similar project together and categorize. So like I talk about in my studio, I organize similar items together. For example, floral vases in various sizes are in one area, and the faux floral that I have live right next to the floral vases, right? So when I arrange flowers, I can grab both things very easily and see what exactly I need. And all my accent pillows are in one area. They're organized by colors. So if I'm putting a room together, I can immediately say, okay, I need red pillows. And I just go and grab the red pillows in different shapes and sizes and textures I have. And all my living room props are in one area and so on. So this not only helps with the efficiency of pulling the objects to use, it also helps greatly that every object has a space to live. And so every time I need to pull something, I know where it is. Number 2, visual displays. So can you imagine how many products are in one H&M store? Probably a lot. I would say probably a million SKUs, right? So how can someone shop and buy all that stuff that they want? Or like find more stuff that they want? Because a store wants to sell as many products to you as possible, right? So how can they visual merchandise it to make sure that you not only buy, maybe you come into Uniqlo just to buy one shirt, but you end up leaving with 20, right? For example. So all these stores, they visually display everything that they sell. So you can see that, for example, they have 5 colors in the same shirt and they have all these different sizes. And it's the same with our student organization, for example. I have everything out visually so I can really quickly shop for my projects. Number 3, you want to display items by the frequency of usage. So have you noticed when you go into a bookstore, the top sellers are usually all laid out in the front and it's the first thing you see? It's because most people buy from the top sellers list, right? Because, for example, you're hearing like Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's basically a word of mouth book. Like in every single creative community, everybody's talking about Big Magic. So if you're a creative professional, you want to learn more about it, what are you going to do, right? You're going to walk in the bookstore, and because it's a bestseller, it's the first thing you see. So it's easy access. And like also, have you noticed like most popular items in the grocery store are usually at eye level? It's not an accident. So these items are displayed purposely to grab your attention while you shop. So it's the same way how you should organize your items. For example, if you're organizing your kitchen cabinets, place the place that you use every day in a space where you can easily access. This will also help you when you put away stuff. So you can put the stuff you don't normally use on the higher shelves. Number 4, get the right tools. Usually when you have limited space, going vertical is a great way to add more space without taking up more space. We have risers, for example, we get from IKEA and Amazon that we use to double up the space we have for dish storage at the studio. I'm also a huge fan of baskets and boxes. We use large clear plastic bins for storing our linens and bedding, and this way they don't get dusty and we can easily see what to pull for each job. And a label maker is also a great tool when it comes to organizing. I use a combination of labels and checklists for our studio storage bins to make sure that we get everything we need for projects. For example, for our bed bins. So sometimes we buy bedspreads that come in a set that includes bed skirts, sheets, pillowcases, and Euroshams and duvet covers. But some bedspreads we buy only have 2 pillowcases and 1 sham, right? So I have these bed checklists where I write down what does this bin contains and what do we need to bring on the job site. And the reason why I had a checklist was it helps to keep us organized, to know what's in the bin exactly. We also double check obviously before each bin goes out for projects. But I think in the beginning of my career, we keep forgetting stuff. Like for example, we'll show up maybe with the wrong numbers of pillows and we have to go back to a warehouse and grab more pillows, or just go on the job site, go to Target or something, buy one really quickly. And that's a waste of time. So after we implement a checklist, we really minimize the possibility of having those mistakes, and it really saves us a lot of time and energy. So you can use boxes and organizers to put away clutter visually. A label maker is very affordable and it can help you figure out what you've stored in those boxes and organizers. If you don't have shelving, you can always build some, like the simple ledges, or getting a bookshelf from big box retailers like IKEA or Target. In my apartment, I use these leftover floorboards. They're basically like planks of floorboards, and I went to a hardware store and I bought these like L brackets, and I just screw them on the wall, and they're very easy to make. And then they house all my DVDs in my closets, higher up too, so I can visually see everything. And because it's not something I use every day, it's kind of like, not taking up a lot of space. Number 5, simple always trumps complicated. I have a very bad habit of overthinking, and it's something that I work on constantly, not to overthink. So when I get stuck when I overthink, I get stuck very easily and I never take actions. So a lot of times nowadays, I brain dump everything in my notebook and then I pick out things that I think are the easiest to tackle. So, like we say, the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak. So then I move on from there. Because I think, like running too, the hardest thing is to get started. Same thing with clearing, with cleaning, with clutter, with changing our habits, etc. The hardest part is to get started. So that's it for today's show. I want to thank you so much for listening. If you haven't connected with us on the Facebook group, please do so, because I'll be posting in there to see if you have any questions for our upcoming guests. We're going to have guests coming back in March after Project Home is over this month. I'm also currently looking for more guests to be on the show for Season 3 and Season 4. If you know anyone or want to suggest someone, please let me know. If you enjoyed today's episode, please definitely leave us a review and a rating on iTunes. This will help others to find our show and to keep it going. As usual, feel free to ask any questions on the show notes or in our private Facebook group. You can find the show notes by going to www.stageformore.com/podcast. That's it. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic week and happy staging.